Welcome everyone to the Bing Ads webcast on the science of Excel for PPC marketers. My name is MJ DePalma and I will be your host today. This is the third webcast in our Advertiser Science series, and we are excited to share concrete methodologies of harnessing the power of Excel for your marketing. Before we begin, let's review some housekeeping items to enhance your experience with us today. The webcast console that you see is customizable on your side, where you can click the content widgets that you see on your screen and move them around or size them for your screen size. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the maximize icon on the top right of your slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. We recommend, if you can, to leave all the widgets as they are so you have the ability to see all the great resources at the same time. This webcast is jam-packed with great information, and because of that, we most likely will not have time for Q&A at the end. However, feel free to tweet your questions to Bing Ads and Eric Couch if they go unanswered using the hashtag AskBingAds, and Eric will do his best to answer them for you. We will also be following up with a blog post on any unanswered questions, so be on the lookout for that and follow in the follow-up email after the webcast. Also, you'll see a resource widget in the upper right-hand corner we'll refer to during the webcast. Go ahead now and download the Excel spreadsheet you see so you're ready to follow along later with Eric. Also, we found out that the PDF of the actual presentation was not downloadable, and that's probably because the presentation is so large. So we'll fix that on the on-demand portion. We'll figure that out. It might be a PDF of 2 parts, so be on the lookout for that. Also, there's a Twitter widget that will enable you to tweet right from the webcast with the hashtag Bing Ads and hashtag Bing Ads webinar hashtags. That's kind of redundant, but that's what it is, which appears to your upper right under resources. We will also provide all Twitter handles of the speakers in the next slide. Let me introduce as I said, my name is MJ DePalma, and I will be your host in monitoring all Q&A. And we also have Eric Couch, who's our client development and training manager. And as you can see, he's also an Excel superhero in that picture.
More of an Excel dork, but I appreciate the enthusiasm, or I guess just the superhero designation. Fun fact, MJ is actually the person who took that photo of me.
That's right.
It is, yeah. I just felt compelled to just kind of like rip that open and just let my Excel flag fly. So
you've gotten a lot of mileage out of that, Eric.
I really have. A lot of interesting comments, but all good things, and I'm not ashamed.
Well, you truly love Excel, and
it's true. It's true.
So it fits you really well. Also, just to mention, the on-demand version, just so you know, for you and your colleagues, will be available approximately 2 days after this webcast and can be accessed using the same link you registered at, which is aka.ms/Excel for PPC. If your colleagues or friends couldn't make it this time, be sure to share that link with them, and you'll get it in the follow-up email that I mentioned earlier. Last housekeeping item, we would love your participation in our survey at the end of the webcast so that we can improve in any way possible. So let's get started. What's on the agenda?
Oh, well, I was going to ask you what's on the agenda, but I guess I'm the one who put this all together, so I should probably know that, right? So yeah, what we're going to talk about today, we have a lot of ground to cover. So here's what we're going to cover. The power of conditional formatting and pivot tables. We're going to talk about some ways you can use Excel to turbocharge some insights you get from the Bing Ads interface. We're also going to talk about how to combine Excel formulas like a mad PPC scientist. I'm going to throw some new formulas at the audience that you may not have heard before, especially because we only just released them. I'm also going to talk about how you can use some plugins like Solver to rearrange and incrementally add budget within your ROI goals. So does that sound good?
That sounds awesome, Eric.
All right.
I do want to touch on that. We've been doing a lot of client trainings and doing a lot of events, and from those events, we've heard over and over again, this is where this webcast and this content actually came from, is that our customers really wanted to know, how can I be more data-driven simply by using the tools that I have? How can I be more powerful? How can I be more insightful? And so being at Microsoft and having Excel is like such an amazing, magical win-win.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to work with spreadsheets, you might as well work on the program that is the best spreadsheet tool in the universe.
That's right.
So let's get started, right? So yeah, the tools MJ mentioned, so the ones we're going to be talking about today, 3 in particular, Excel. So hopefully everybody here has that. I know I do. It's going to be kind of critical to walk through this, but we're also going to talk about Auction Insights and the Campaign Planner. And the one you'll see here, it's grayed out. It's Bing Ads Intelligence. It's another plugin for Excel. We're not going to talk about it today, but
we will be doing another webcast coming soon that will be dedicated to Bing Ads Intelligence.
Absolutely. It's kind of like the hidden gem of search marketing, so just kind of there to whet your appetite. So if you want to follow along, at any point you can go to the upper right corner of the webcast console and download the file. It's the I Simply Excel Demo Workbook. It has pretty much everything we're going to talk about in there with some pretty detailed instructions. So if you miss what we're talking about or you want to like revisit it at any time, just download that and it'll be there at your fingertips ready to go.
Awesome.
All right, we ready?
We're ready.
We have a lot of ground to cover, so we're going to fly. So our first thing to talk about is let's avoid spreadsheet blindness with the power of conditional formatting. So what is spreadsheet blindness? Well, spreadsheet blindness is an affliction that unfortunately affects about 90% of search engine marketers. Basically, it's when you're staring at a spreadsheet full of rows and columns that go beyond counting and you kind of go blind. Like your eyes feel like they get set on fire. Like it's just, you're not enjoying what you're looking at. You're not able to figure out what kind of insights you're able to derive from these spreadsheets. And we want to help you out. And there are some tools and some tactics you can employ to help you. So what is conditional formatting? Well, conditional formatting is an Excel function that allows you to format things conditionally. Well, the non-sarcastic answer of that is conditional formatting is a function that allows you to automatically change the format of a cell based on values and parameters that you dictate. And you can actually change a lot of different things with it. Like it's not just limited to, well, it's really just not limited at all. So you can change text color and format. You can also change cell colors. Now, that's going to be one we'll talk about at length. You can also add some bar graph overlays to your data and then insert some very pretty graphics. So I'm going to warn you now, like that's about as fancy as my design know-how gets. So if you're expecting anything prettier, you're probably going to be disappointed. But how do you find it? So it's not really hiding anywhere. It's one of the default functions in Excel in the home ribbon. You can find it all kind of on the right-hand side, kind of squished between the general setting and also like the format as table stuff. Now, if you're not seeing it, maybe your Excel window is not quite long enough. But once you do have it there and you click on it and you get the drop-down menu, you have a lot of different options. So you can highlight cells according to values that you set, so things like greater than, less than, between, equal to. You can also get fancy and look at like certain text things, like look at things with like text that contains certain characters or certain things that you maybe want to highlight, like maybe an ad copy. You can also look at things with predefined rules. So if you don't want to do things by, a custom nature, do just the top 10 or top 10% or bottom 10% of things, or like above and below average items. So maybe you want to look at your keywords and conditionally format the ones that like are above or below certain like thresholds for conversion volume, right? Or like the top 10. Just isolate certain themes there. You can also layer data bars over your spreadsheet. So this can be really useful for quantitative metrics, things that aren't necessarily like good or bad. You just need to know how many of them that you have, things like impressions. Whereas this other one is really great for qualitative metrics, which are color gradients. So if you want to, so spoiler alert, if you want to create things like a heat map, this is where you want to go. Like if you want to look at things like whether they're good or bad, based off of how high or low they are on a scale, you can use this to figure that out. And then you can also insert some icon sets in line with your data. If you're not a big fan of like just some of the color things, instead you're more visual, you want to do like some arrows or some other color-coded icons, do that instead. And even below that, you're not just limited to the ones we have highlighted here. You can also create custom rules. And so believe me, creating custom conditional formatting rules is probably a webinar unto itself because you can get very, very, very in depth with the color gradients and all the different types of options in there. So we're not going to dive into that today, but you have the option to customize any of these rules in a way you see fit with those custom rules there, and just highlight new rule. So how can we actually use this? So what's an easy way that you can get started using this function in kind of a scientific way? And the easiest way is creating a day parting heat map, doing it by campaign or even at the account level. So to use conditional formatting properly, so you want to download it, so it looks like we're a little bit out of order here. So what you want to do is you actually create an account from the report center, making sure that the unit of time is hour of day. And then you download that report to Excel. And so you can either, and if you want to, you can add a campaign, make it a campaign report, not just an account report. And so what you want to do is, this is like the raw output that you get. So this is like spreadsheet blindness personified. So MJ, what am I supposed to do here?
Well, you're supposed to do conditional formatting.
Yeah, exactly, because you really can't tell. Unless you want to stare at these numbers and try and figure out what it is you're supposed to do.
I have no idea where to look here.
Exactly. So to use conditional formatting properly, all you have to do is highlight each column individually and select the scale that you want to use. So in this case, I'll show you the wrong way of doing it. So if you highlight every single column and just do one scale for all of it, it actually gets kind of thrown off, and it looks sort of like a mess, like this. So this doesn't actually tell us anything. All it's really telling me here is that, no kidding, or no duh, impressions are the highest value on this spreadsheet. That's not actually helping us at all.
No.
Instead, if we highlight each column individually and apply the appropriate color scale, so for things like cost per conversion, making sure that lower numbers are better, or for click-through rate, making sure higher numbers are better. Well, if we do that correctly, then it's actually, we get a more accurate picture of account performance by time of day, visualized in heat map form. And then if we layer some gradient bars to these quantitative metrics, it actually provides even more insight. We know what the ebb and flow of traffic is over the course of this day in terms of both impressions, clicks, spend, and conversion volume. And then we see our qualitative metrics with this red and green contrast, immediately highlighting some opportunities here. So MJ, just looking at the contrasts, so the red versus the green, what are some of the opportunities I have here? To maybe bid more.
So the green, where it says line number 7.
Yeah, so we're
8,
doing really well there.
And 11.
Exactly.
Where it's not as green, you can probably gain more there.
Exactly. And so when you look at something like average position, where I'm doing the worst in the day, so I have that one midnight hour that's pretty bad, but I also have those hours from about 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. In the afternoon for this particular account. My average position is pretty bad, and my cost per conversion numbers actually pretty good, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, exactly. So looking at those contrasts, I can pretty much immediately see an opportunity to implement a day parting bid modifier to be a little more competitive there. So that's the big thing when working with heat maps, is to look at the contrasts if you're looking at this sort of day parting thing. But that's not the only use for it. So this is a day parting heat map just looking at time of day, but you can get a little more advanced. So this is the same kind of heat map here, only now we've added in days in addition to time of day. So we're seeing the entire week, and we can see some pretty clear general themes, so early morning hours, pretty much regardless of day, probably not good for us. But Sundays, pretty terrible for this account, as is some of the evening hours, those are the dinner hours from about 5 to 7 p.m. So we can get some pretty clear directional insights from what it's supposed to do here, but it's not even just limited to day parting. That's not the only use case for this. So this is a super slick ad copy, ad performance heat map. This is an older version of it. So you can actually get this, if you have Bing Ads account managers, they can run this for your own accounts, or I can teach you how to do this, which, we'll go into this in just a second, but can you imagine trying to figure out what the best combination was of your ad title and ad descriptions if these were all just raw CTR numbers?
No.
Exactly. It'd just be a bunch of numbers on a big white spreadsheet, totally incapable of figuring anything out. But if you use this conditional formatting and look for like the greenest cells, you're able to figure out pretty quickly like what your best combinations are. And for this particular industry, so this is for auto insurance, and what we've done here is we've looked at like what we're using in the ad title and then also like the calls to action or the features or the benefits in the ad description line, and pit those against one another to figure out what's the highest click-through rate. And we found that mentioning free and safe, go figure, for auto insurance, like that's the most popular combination.
As well as I see fast and safe.
And also
quote,
like quote and safe.
Safe is pretty.
Yeah, safe seems to be like the universal best performer there. We add in a couple of other extra elements there for flavor, but safe, particularly in that ad title, like that's the key. Now, MJ, there is one common theme. These two heat maps, they had one thing in common. You have any idea what it might be?
Tell me.
Tell me? Okay, well, I guess you didn't read ahead on the presentation.
I didn't.
Okay, so the one common theme that they had is that they both came from pivot tables.
Awesome.
So, yeah, like the ad performance heat map, if you know how to make a pivot table already, I mean, I'm going to go into it just now if you don't, but if you already do know, like that ad copy performance heat map came from a pivot table. So when you use something like conditional formatting on a pivot table, it kind of amplifies the power that a pivot table already has, like to isolate and look at specific segments of your data. Like conditional formatting just makes it that much easier to read. So I guess it's time to kind of dive in to talking about your new best friend, or maybe rediscovering your old flame, the pivot table. I put this picture here because it's man's best friend. Well, pivot table really is like the Excel user's best friend, especially when it comes to PPC. Like the pivot table is one of the very first things that I ever looked at when it came to learning Excel. So let's go through a hypothetical situation here. So let's say you needed to pull the following report. So we need to look at a keyword performance report, a 6-month performance broken out by month, match type, devices, and conversions. So if I go to the Bing Ads Report Center, I can download a keyword report with all of that stuff in there. But the problem is, it looks like this. So it's too much data. You have the same metrics that are repeated over and over again. So if you look at, like, we have the ad group and the account name and all that stuff, like, it's really hard to simplify this, or like to figure out, like, what this report is actually supposed to tell me. Like, I'm looking at a specific thing here, and it's not giving me anything. Like, so the issue here is that this report on its own isn't really actionable. Or, I mean, it's actionable, but you have to take some time to really dive into it, right? Now, enter the pivot table. So I'm probably preaching to the choir here, so let's all kind of like have a mutual love fest for the pivot table. But just for those of you not in the know, well, now you are. A pivot table is a program tool that allows you to aggregate and compare data from selected columns and rows. And then you can manipulate that to obtain a desired report. But in English, it's a reporting tool that you can do a bunch of crazy stuff with. The short answer is that it's awesome. Like, it's my favorite tool in Excel, pretty much. So let's kind of give the comparison here. So the standard Excel table. So it's a raw output. It's not really actionable or obvious, and it requires some adjustments to actually use this as a report. Like, you wouldn't want to send that giant white Excel spreadsheet to a client or to a boss or to anybody who cares about what it is you're doing, right? Whereas the pivot table, you can summarize that data in easy-to-digest formats. You can also quickly compare those subsets of data together and then reveal patterns and relations in that data. And really, it just allows for faster analysis. So if we look at, our original problem here, so considering that question we had, so which keywords get the most clicks broken out by match type on computers, well, if we focus on these 4 elements of the pivot table, rows, values, columns, and filters, well, we can actually see that. So if we want to look at what it actually looks like when you're manipulating these pivot tables. So there are 4 elements: filters, columns, rows, and values. Those build and define your pivot table. And so by dragging and dropping those, like these elements into these different fields, you can create a pretty robust report. Though I want to say this, you can get there in many different ways with a pivot table, like either by rearranging stuff in the rows or the values or columns or filters. Like, there are a million different ways to get this data there, so it's really flexible. Now, there are a few steps performing a perfect pivot. So one is determining what the table should display, selecting all the data you want to pivot, Navigate to Insert and Pivot Table. You choose the location for your table and create it, and then drag and drop field list elements into place. And just for those of you still on the line, we are going to go into some more advanced applications of this. We just need to kind of set the foundation. Now, let's determine what the table displays. So at the most basic level, the basic form of this question is, which keywords get the most clicks? Well, to figure that out, we put keywords in our rows field and values in our clicks field, right? So now we're just looking at clicks per keyword. So pretty simple. Then we layer on another element to that. So match type, we put match type in columns, and now we're looking at clicks by keyword, but also broken up by match type. So again, getting a little more advanced, and then adding in that device filter, and now we're looking at computers specifically. So now we're looking at exact clicks by device, like on PC, phrase clicks on PC, like on a keyword level. So once we do all that, so how to actually create it, selecting the data, well, make sure you select it. So select all the data because you never know what you might want to add into your pivot table. So yeah, that's just kind of a common best practice. And there are some quick keyboard shortcuts I'll share with you in a second that'll actually kind of basically teach you how to do it much faster. Go to Navigate, Insert Pivot Table. This will prompt you to choose a location for the new table. And so it's a best practice here to, once you get that option to insert the pivot table somewhere, just create it in a new spreadsheet or in a new worksheet. Don't create it in the actual sheet that contains all the data, because that's going to make things kind of messy. And then drag and drop your fields into place. So you just physically move them into the proper quadrant. So make sure device, you drag and drop it over into filters. And do the same thing for the rest of those, like in the order that we talked about. And so what that does is, once you've kind of got that all arranged, is it tells you pretty specifically, so you're looking at which keywords get the most clicks, broken out by match type on computers. And right now, because of this pivot table that we've manipulated, we can find out that it's this modified broad scrubs discount keyword that's getting the most clicks. Now, some of you, that's fairly basic, right? So fine, I hear you. So I'll show you my very favorite application for pivot tables, which is normalized quality score. So this came to me, I learned this a couple of years ago from a really smart guy by the name of Brad Geddes. So if you don't already follow this guy on Twitter, he's at BG Theory. He's somewhat of a PPC genius, a good friend of ours, he's an ad copy a guru. So if you want to know about not just Excel stuff, but ad copy, he's a guy to follow. And he taught me how to do this. So this is normalized quality score. So why is this, what's the big deal with this? So the problem with a normal pivot table is when you look at something like quality score is that it uses averages. And averages lie. So if you think about, we have 5 keywords in this ad group. Well, if we think about the average quality score of this, well, technically, it's got an average quality score of 8.6. Now, I don't know about you, but clearly there's a problem here, right? I'm just highlighting it for everybody to see. It's that big 3. It's just standing out. It's kind of like a sore thumb. And it's especially problematic if we have a situation like this, where that quality score 3 keyword is actually driving the majority of the impression volume in this ad group. Now, if you're just looking at the average quality score of this ad group, you're not going to be able to see that, there's this one outlier here dragging the whole thing down. It's kind of masked by that average, right? So how do we actually account for this? Well, I'll show you how. So luckily, we can tweak pivot tables to identify this issue in our account. So we just need to add some columns to our data sheet, use a calculated field, and then sort and filter the result. How do you do that? Well, it goes a little bit something like this. So if you want to create this yourselves, go to a keyword report from the report center. Make sure it includes spend, impressions, and quality score, and then make the date range for the last 30 days. Now, one thing, I'm going to share some of my favorite pro tips with you. So your Excel spreadsheet was not carved in stone. You may download it, and you may seem to think so, but it's not. So you're more than welcome and free to change it or add to it, add some columns to it. It's okay, which is exactly what we're going to do here. So for this particular spreadsheet, add a column to the end of it and title it Quality Score times Impressions. And so what you want to do is, for each of your keywords, multiply your impressions by your quality score in that column. And then pivot table it. And then just another quick pro tip here, Control, Shift, and the arrow keys make selecting your pivot table data way easier. Like if you're working with a lot of rows and columns of data, don't drag and drop it. Like just use the Control, Shift, and the arrow keys to select just those populated cells, and it makes your life much simpler. Now, put your ad groups in the row field. So you create your pivot table in a new spreadsheet, put your ad groups in the row field, put average of quality score, sum of impressions, and sum of spend in the values field. And this is going to look something like this. Now, you use calculated fields when you're working with aggregate derived metrics in a pivot table. Because again, like if you try and take something like average of quality score or like sum of CPC for like your ad groups, like it's not going to calculate correctly, or especially not the averages. You want to make sure you're creating a calculated field for these so it calculates the actual like honest CPC. Otherwise, it's just going to take the average CPC of like all the elements inside that ad group. So make sure you use a calculated field for that kind of stuff. Or when you want to calculate something very interesting. So how to actually make use of calculated fields. So when you're in your pivot table, you can find it under Fields, Items, and Sets in the Pivot Table Tools Analyze tab. And so for this calculated field, name it Normalized Quality Score, and for that formula, make it the Quality Score times Impressions column divided by Impressions. So don't make it actually, like, make sure the quotations are there. Like, that's the important part. Make sure you're selecting that column and not just trying to make it like multiply your quality score times impressions here. That's not what we're trying to measure. So the reason this works is because we're looking at this at the ad group level, not just the keyword level. So what we're going to do here is that by waiting for these impressions, we're able to quickly identify ad groups that have poor quality score keywords driving all the traffic. So if you remember this issue here, so this ad group had an average quality score of 8.6. Well, if we go through this math, this extra math here, it actually shows us that if we wait for impressions, it's at a quality score of a 4.3, a weighted quality score of 4.3, which, you know, if you know your quality scores, that's bad. So what it does here is you can now analyze your ad groups by their true quality score and quickly determine where you should break out your keywords. So this is a really great way to figure out where structural changes need to happen in your account, because you have like some keywords in like a specific ad group dragging things down. So break those keywords out into their own ad groups to try and improve the quality score. Now, another pivot table pro tip. You can actually, and this is one not many people know, so you can actually sort and filter a pivot table by more than just the row values. Now, this might actually be some kind of bug or just something not intended, because sometimes it will break things. But you can actually use sort and filter on the cell right next to the top row in your pivot table to create filter buttons next to like every single, or at the top of every single row in your pivot table. So in this case, like you want to highlight that cell, hit sort and filter, and then you can start sorting and filtering by the actual like values and like the sum of normalized quality score. And so if you do this, you can actually start looking for the following things, which are like the big red flags. So look for a normalized quality score of 4 or below, or even 5 or below, because that's when you know you have like really big issues. Sort descending by spend, because you can do that with that sort filter in place now, even though it will, again, start to make your pivot table get a little bit funky. Like, don't do this too often, but it definitely helps. And then look for a large difference between your average quality score and then your normalized quality score, because that's when you know, like, that's where the biggest structural issues are. So if you're not, like, at all impressed by that or satisfied, well, you know, I hope you are, but if not, I will come back, and this is either a threat or a promise, depending on how much you like pivot tables. I'll come back and talk another hour about how to pivot table 100,000 lines of Salesforce lead data with monthly campaign performance reports. Does that sound good?
Sounds awesome, Eric.
All right, so that's kind of pivot tabling. And again, so if you wanted to do something with your ad copy performance heat map, you would create a pivot table based off of an ad report. So just create an extra couple of lines, like one for ad titles and one for ad descriptions, and then manually enter in like the elements that you wanted to pivot table. And to then just use like a calculated field for CTR, and then layer conditional formatting on top of it to create that heat map. Sounds fairly simple-ish, right?
does.
Kind of.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Well, the instructions are all there. So again, once you guys get access to something like this presentation, it might come in 2 parts. But you should be able to reverse engineer the process from that.
Yeah, in the next couple days, this deck will be available in a couple parts for download at the same URL that you used to register and log in for today's presentation. It was way too big. I didn't realize that until a few minutes before we started. Unfortunately, I apologize for that. But it will be available. Everybody was asking for it, so thanks very much.
All right, so let's jump on to, because we got a lot of ground to cover. So let's talk about how to turbocharge the Bing Ads interface with Excel. We have a lot of really cool tools that not a lot of people know about, especially ones that are fairly unique to our platform. So the first one I want to talk about is the Campaign Planner. So if you want to go find the Campaign Planner, so we have it in the resources list, but it's also at just bingads.com/campaign planner. And the reason we like this so much, the reason we think it's really cool, is that this is a way for you to plan campaigns with better insights. This is really a great way to plan like overall campaign strategy at an industry or vertical level, because you can monitor marketplace changes, traffic trends across your industry, and then also discover new campaign, ad group, and keyword ideas. But the big reason that we're so excited about it, you get performance and traffic data and vertical and product insights, but the thing that really sets us apart here is we give you competitive insights by keyword and industry. So if you want to look at specific keywords you're not even advertising for yet, we give you competitive insights about like the domains, the types of advertisers you're going to be going up against. So if you want to look at like something like running shoes or video game consoles, you'll see like you'll be going up against Xbox.com and Microsoft.com, and also start to get an idea of their ad coverage, like how often are they showing for this term. What's their position coverage? Where are they at, like on the page, average position, sidebar, main line? Like we give you all of those insights. And then you can also pin and favorite these terms for later use. You can also see these trends by keyword and over time. So you get keyword vertical trends and performance data by looking at this summary tab. So you can either look at it per month or also year over year. And then again, you can see these competitive marketplaces before you even start advertising by using the competition tab. So, as an example here, we just have this MacBook Air term. So this is usually a video that we show. We're just going to like paint a picture for you. So we saw a really cool use case here where looking at this MacBook Air term, like we saw the trends. So we saw a spike. Oh, it's actually going. So we're going to look at it, like the trends here. And so for this MacBook Air term, like we're looking at basically like what's the traffic like over the course of a year. And so no surprise here, it really spikes going into those winter months. So that's like Black Friday, Christmas, Thanksgiving shopping. And so we can also really see so when it happens, but also on which devices. So we get this device breakdown, and so we see that this spike is really happening on desktops. And then we can also take a look at just device performance in aggregate too, because maybe we're getting this is a really great way to help you pitch a mobile strategy. And we need more time than this, so I'm going to kind of move on. But the big thing that we're going to see here is that when we go to this competition tab, you'll see that we're advertising, let's say, for the sake of argument, don't tell anybody, MJ, that I'm Apple. And I'm seeing that on the results page, this Microsoft Surface Pro 3 or Pro 4 ad is showing up above us on our core term. This might be a problem, right? Especially if I'm Apple's SEM manager, maybe my boss sees this and they start blowing up my phone asking what's going on? Are you actually doing your job? And well, this report can help you circumvent that, can help you say okay, yes, this is happening, but it's only happening maybe 1 in 5 searches because Microsoft's ad coverage is only about 20%. Their top of page rate is only about 8% of the time. So this happened to be the once in a lifetime showing on the SERP that caused this to be a problem. And you can export all of this to Excel at any time too. So you're not just limited to looking at the UI. But we also have some more insights here. So we can look at the Seahawks jerseys term. So once this actually advances here, we also get location insights too. And so I used to sit in front of a guy, his name was Tony Austin, a really good friend, also a rabid Seahawks fan. And I had a working theory that maybe Seahawks fans were, somewhat newer to football fandom. Maybe they were kind of more of a bandwagon fandom. And I kept on giving a hard time about this. I said, like, oh, they call themselves the 12th man because none of them were fans until 2012. that probably stepped over the line a little bit, but that was the kind of the breaking point. He's like, okay, you can't prove this. And I was like, well, can't I, Tony? Can't I? And so using this tool, we could actually see that there was a pretty significant spike in Seahawks jersey traffic in Washington when they went to the Super Bowl. This was in January 2015. But this isn't just used for winning dumb office place arguments. You can also use this for campaign planning. So you can use this for budget forecasting because we give you the impression volume month over month. And with a little bit of Excel know-how, you can actually plot this out and figure out what those numbers actually mean. So this is what it looks like when you hover over each one of those data points and record the impression volume, and then put this in Excel, and then with a little bit of conditional formatting, you can then figure out how does this compare to the average traffic volume in this industry. So this is for education and training, and what we found is that numbers-wise, there was actually about a 40% dip in the summer months and about a 20% rebound in the fall months. And so how this can help you is that this can actually influence budget discussions. So if you're planning out your monthly budget, like month by month by month, and the person who's making the decision has the expectation that you're going to be able to spend as much in the summer months that you were in the early winter months, then they might be disappointed. So you can kind of get ahead of that conversation by saying, look, traffic volume is going to dip by about 40%, so we should probably account for that. And then you can also take the same tactic with overall budget increases year over year because we provide you with those year over year numbers. And so the mean traffic volume, on a monthly basis, is about 20% higher year over year. So you can also translate that to say, okay, maybe our budgets should also increase if we want to, capture all that traffic. So that's, one potential use case. So this is all conditional formatting. But there's another tool that I'm also a big fan of, and it's Auction Insights. So Auction Insights, we used to have this in Bing Ads Intelligence, but it's not there anymore. But you can still find it in the user interface. We actually just released this. So we released a Bing Ads Academy cheat sheet about this. It's on a YouTube channel now. So I just tweeted about it, so you can probably just find it in my history. I'll retweet it after this webinar because we talk about this there too. And so this helps you get some actionable insights about your competition. So you get, comparisons to other advertisers on the auctions in which you took part. You can also monitor the competition over time. So Auction Insights is not a static snapshot of your account. It changes with whatever date range you're looking at. And you can discover opportunities and also issues by looking at 5 key metrics. So the key metrics you'll look at are impression share, average position, and overlap rate. Well, those are the first 3. Overlap rate is actually a really good one to focus on because this is how often did you compete against other advertisers. So if you see specific changes in this overlap rate, this is how you know somebody is gunning for you, specifically, especially if it's on a brand term. If you see a really big spike in your overlap rate on a brand term, you know somebody is gunning for you. It's also kind of a backdoor insight into budget strategy or keyword strategy because if you're seeing an increase in overlap rate, it means they've either specifically added this keyword and it's no longer just, matching in a broad sense or a phrase match sense, like they're targeting this specifically, or they've increased the budget in which that keyword was, to the campaign in which that keyword was located. But we also have position above rate, which is how often did other advertisers show up above you, and then top of page rate. Now, position above rate is also kind of a backdoor insight into their bid strategy relative to yours. Because if you're seeing an increase in position above rate, and some advertiser relative to you, that means they really increase their bids on that term too. So if you're seeing an increase in position above rate and then also overlap rate, that means on a brand term, that means they're gunning for you specifically. So let's talk about a theoretical use case here, or an actual use case, to troubleshoot this. So let's troubleshoot this account versus our competitor. So this is for a real life example here for a very popular diet keyword for an advertiser. They were dominating on this term, running pretty much unopposed for the first half of January. Now, go figure, diet terms, very popular in the new year. Not a big surprise there. But we saw some performance issues pop up with this guy. Their average CPC started, it spiked, their CPA spiked too, and looking at the change history, there was nothing that this advertiser did to account for that. But if we look at their auction insights report, we might find some more. So this was like the before and after snapshot. So before, this advertiser was pretty much running unopposed. So normally there's an animation there, but I'll just give you the Cliffs Notes version of it. They had an average position of 1.5, and the closest overlap rate was about 46%, and the position above rate, the closest one was about 38%. Now that's about to change. So this is the after snapshot. So they had 5 new competitors enter this space, and then the overlap rate ended up like increasing from 46% to 70%, and then position above rate went from 38% to like 81 and 91%, meaning that they're no longer running unopposed here. And that's what accounts for like the big difference in their performance here. Now, because this is an Excel webinar, I'm going to tie it back into auction, like the Excel insights here. So you can run a pivot table, like download these auction insights reports over time, like with a monthly segment in place from some other platforms, or just look at it from a monthly, like month by month in Bing Ads, and download that report, and then pivot table it, and you can actually see how your competitive landscape changes over time. So what we're looking at here is a pivot table of overlap rate over about a 6-month span. And we're seeing how seasonality influences our advertisers' campaign strategy. And so this is for a bridal keyword, like there's a wedding dress keyword. And so we're seeing an advertiser there in gray. I'm not sure if I can say their name out loud, but I can't say it out loud, but they were a big bridal retailer. And we saw that as they exited the wedding season, which is allegedly like peaks in July and tapers off after that, I guess, right? It was tapering off, and we're seeing a drastic decrease in their overlap rate because they're no longer spending as much. Make sense?
Makes sense.
All right. Well, we also have some other things to go through. So you can also go through like position above rate, which is, again, kind of analysis of their bid strategy, seeing how competitors' bids change relative to yours. And in this case, that orange line may or may not belong to a giant Seattle-based e-commerce retailer who really decreased their bids going into December. And so this is, some things you can do with it. So these are, again, this came from a pivot table, and this is just data you can get from the Bing Ads interface. But let's really nerd out here. So we've talked about like all these other interface stuff. So let's really get to the nuts and bolts of Excel. Let's talk about how you can use and combine some formulas like a mad scientist. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So we already know Excel is an incredibly versatile tool, and almost every formula can have unique PPC applications. So I'm going to run through some of my favorites here, and then maybe throw some curveballs at you too. So we have if, which is for making conditional if-then statements, like if my conversions are greater than 1, then increase my bid by 10%. Make it 15%. And that's kind of what it would look like in practice. So it's just a really basic bid formula. But you can also make use of nested if-then statements for more power, like if my conversions are greater than 1, and it's below position 3, and it's exact, then do all that stuff I just said. And this is kind of what that formula would look like. Again, so you can also see this on the demo sheet if you download that. Now, I'm going to throw a curveball at you because we have some new formulas. We just released a couple of new formulas that have some actually pretty relevant PPC applications in the latest release of Excel 2016. And so one of those is ifs. So if you're not comfortable with multiple if statements in a row, use this formula. So if you want to increase your bids by 10% for multiple conversions, but only 5% for poor average position. So this is what that looks like. And so this is really great for if you're not wanting to make multiple ifs like in a row, because sometimes like there's some logic to it that isn't intuitive to some people. So this can be a really great way to make use of those nested formulas without having to actually know how to do it. Now the weakness here is that this is only for true statements. So with the regular if formula, you can make a value for if it's true or if it's false. You can't do that here. It's only for if it's true. So you're not going to be able to make super complicated ones the way you could with a really complex if-then statement, but it is a way to make something a little bit more advanced. So that's brand spanking new. So if you have Excel 2016, give that a shot, because there are some variants on that too. There's like max ifs, min ifs, so you can kind of play around with those, but we're not done yet. So we also have LEN. I'm pretty sure I couldn't do this job without LEN, or really post to Twitter for that matter, because it's for counting the number of characters used in a cell, which is really useful for things like ad copy when you're working with a limited number of characters. And so the nice thing about LEN is that it also works with formulas. So like if you're concatenating something together, like it actually counts the results of the concatenate, not just like the number of characters used in that concatenate formula. So it behaves how you'd expect it to. So I definitely recommend you use this if you haven't already. But I also have a few others. So correlate or Pearson. So this is really useful for analyzing the positive or negative correlation in a data set. So you can use this to determine how fluctuating campaign spend is impacting your overall business. Like take a look at the impact, like the correlation of non-branded spend on brand spend, or non-branded impression volume and brand conversions. Try and pit some of these metrics against one another using correlate to figure out how they're related. We also have standard deviation, which provides the standard deviation or variance in the data set. This is also found in pivot tables, which can be really useful in comparing your bids versus the competition. So if you really want to have your mind blown at some point, run an hour of day report on your keywords and take a look at the difference between your average CPC and your max CPC. And then also look at the standard deviation there, because I guarantee you the larger the standard deviation, like the bigger the gulf is between your max CPC and your average CPC. And in that difference is where your advertisers are bidding you up and down over the course of the day. You know, it's where your bids are a little bit more unstable. Now, we also have Linist, which calculates the statistics for a line by using the least squares method. So you can use this to project future performance based on past metrics. I'll show you an example of this a little bit later. Now, we also have concatenate, which is for combining the contents of one cell with another, like we're using this for our ad copy, creating some Bing-friendly ads from an AdWords ad, right? There are two description lines there. We're combining them together to create one Bing ad. It also can combine the contents of any cell with a text string contained in quotation marks. So if you want to create some modified broad match keywords, you would concatenate that together. We're just concatenating a plus symbol to the beginning of like the cell we're targeting. Now, we have another new formula here, which is probably going to blow your minds a little bit. Again, Excel 2016 or later, it's the formula text join, which is a more powerful form of concatenate. And so why is this so cool? Well, it allows you to automatically add delimiters. It also ignores empty cells, and you can join arrays of cells together. So if we have that same example from before, like we have an empty cell in the middle, and then we also have this like delimiter in place. So we're using text join to say, ignore this empty cell, put a period or put a space in between the cells I'm concatenating, and also do this across an entire array of cells. So you have multiple cells to join. You can use text join to do it way faster than concatenate, and in a much simpler formula. So give that one a shot. Now we also have one more to talk about, or we have a couple more to go through, but substitute is useful for substituting one character for another, which again is kind of also useful for creating modified broad match keywords. So if you remember that concatenate formula I showed you, this is the other half of that. So if you look at substitute, now we're just substituting any instance of space with space plus to finish off the formula. But while each formula is useful on its own, if you combine them in nested formulas, you can achieve more faster. So in this previous example, you can combine concatenate and substitute to create modified broad match keywords in one formula, or you can also combine if, concatenate, and substitute to say, if this is my modified broad match ad group, then do the concatenate and substitute. So you can get really in-depth the kind of stuff you're targeting. Now, let's go through a theoretical problem here. Let's say you need to generate about 350,000 keyword-level destination URLs. And let's say that they have unique location, ad group, and product identifiers. Do you think you could do that manually? Or would you even really want to, MJ?
No, not at all.
Not at all, not at all.
I have too many other things that I'd like to do.
Exactly. So the solution here is something like VLOOKUP. So VLOOKUP is one of my favorite formulas. It stands for vertical lookup. And if you need to cross-reference a lot of data, this is really how you do it. Or, you know, you could also use index match too, but this is probably a controversial opinion to voice on an Excel webinar. But index match has always kind of struck me as the hipster version of VLOOKUP, in that it's like, you know, it's like vinyl. Oh, it's, you know, it's just as good, or it like sounds better. It's just way more complicated and like not as many people know about it. That's probably a harsh version of it. It's actually like a little bit more flexible, and it's not quite as taxing on your Excel spreadsheets. But for most people, VLOOKUP is going to get you what you need. But if you know how to use index match, I'm not trying to throw shade at index match. Great function, but we're not going to go into it today. Now, this is the VLOOKUP formula. So it looks a little bit intimidating, so I'm just going to break it down for the newbies in the group. So Lookup value is what you're trying to look up. The table array is the array of cells you're targeting for this search. So it contains what you're trying to look up as well as any corresponding values you might want to pull in. The column index number is the specific column you want to pull in on this search, and then range lookup you just ignore. And so some small reminders here is concatenate or text join, combine cells. So if you want to combine multiple cells, and here's a hint, cells that you might have populated with VLOOKUP, because remember, we have this overall problem we want to solve for. Well, this is how you do it. And then that's the concatenate formula, so it can refer to both cells or strings of text. So it's easy enough, right? So this is a quick walkthrough of just how you might use VLOOKUP in a real use case to solve that one problem of mine. So we have 6 ad groups, 6 keywords with a need for 6 different destination URLs. And so first off, you want to prepare a master list of URLs to cross-reference with your ad groups, right? Then you can also pull those in, so cross-reference it with that first spreadsheet to get the URLs into our new sheet. Then you can do all this other stuff with the substitute formula to prepare our campaign and keyword columns for use with our tracking tags. And then also concatenate all of that together in order to create 6 unique destination URLs. But wait, hold the phone here. I thought that just said combining. So do you not want to take 5 steps to accomplish one task? Well, in that case, don't. Just do it in one formula, because everything I've just talked about can all be done in one single formula. You concatenate these formulas together, doing this entire process in one step rather than 5. So we're concatenating a VLOOKUP with text, with substitutes, and all of that in just one formula to do this in one single step. And so, this sounds super complicated. Has anybody in the history of planet Earth or PPC ever actually used something like this? Well, yeah, actually. I used this back in my agency days, and by the way, that says 18,388. So we were generating unique keyword-level destination URLs for an automatically generated report from a tool provider. And so it was for a Canadian client, and so if you do the math there, we had to do it for 8 provinces and 11 cities. So you multiply 18,000 keywords by each of those modifiers equals 350,000 unique keyword URLs generated in about a half hour. And if I'm being honest, most of that was spent waiting for the formula to compute and also brushing the smoke away from my poor laptop at the time, because it was really struggling with that amount of data. But all of that was just done through VLOOKUP, substitute, and concatenate. Now, I have one more question for you. So, MJ, is there a way to use Excel to intelligently determine how to best spend our advertising budgets? And can you do it across multiple accounts?
Believe it or not, yes.
Yes?
I've seen you do it.
Yeah, she's seen me do this. So, yeah, she's spoiling it for you guys.
And it's a magical moment when you see it for the first time.
Exactly. So you actually can do this, just not with regular Excel. So how you do this is with a plugin called Excel Solver. So Excel Solver, it's a plugin. It solves things. And that's pretty much the last little sarcastic that I'm going to throw in here. And the real answer to this is that it solves equations that you give it according to parameters that you set. Equations like, what is my most efficient budget allocation to maximize conversion volume? So I found this is really useful, especially for you agency guys out there. If you're working with a lot of accounts across a lot of different platforms, I know how working in those things can go on a day-to-day basis. You're making budget tweaks, maybe you're spending on some display campaigns, because you have to make budget for the month, and then once you no longer are in that position, you forgot about that. You didn't forget to tweak it, so you're still spending that same amount on those less efficient campaigns. This is a judgment-free zone, so I'm not calling you out for it. That's just life. So, I mean, especially for you guys out there who work with a lot of accounts, this might be able to help you out. And so how can you do it? Well, so how do you find it? Well, first things first, it's not included by default, but you can find it by going to your Excel options menu and then going to add-ins. So you find it right here. And so once you have it enabled, it's actually in the Data tab, found right there in the Data ribbon in Excel. Now, once you have it enabled, you can do super cool stuff like this. So this came, the genesis of this idea started with a good buddy of mine. His name is Sam Owen. He works at Netflix now. On Twitter, he's at Sam Owen PPC. Super smart guy. He first showed me the solver thing, and then I figured out you could do this across multiple accounts. So what we have here is a mix of Bing and Google campaigns. Ooh. We found the average daily spend across all these campaigns and then calculated the optimal budget as found by Excel Solver. Because we're not just asking how much can I spend, but how much can I spend given the fact that I still need to worry about conversion volume, cost per conversion? Makes sense, right? So how do we actually do that? So again, if you download the Excel demo sheet, all of these instructions are in there. So you can do this in your own accounts. But for the very, very short version of how to do this, basically, you download a campaign report from the Report Center. Make the date range the last 30 days, and make sure it includes the following columns: average CPC, cost, conversions, and conversion rate. And then also make sure it includes impression share loss to budget. And then this is just kind of what that report looks like. You can also include the same metrics from other accounts for this cross-account optimization. Just make sure to include your impression share loss to budget metrics all in the same column. So if you want to try this with your AdWords data, download that same report from AdWords and include its lost IS parentheses budget. There's probably like some percentage in there too. And then you can also do the same thing for your AdWords display campaigns and just use the column display lost impression share to budget. And make sure all of those columns are in the same spot. Make sense so far? Kind of? Well, again, the instructions are all in that demo sheet. So what we want to do here is find our average daily spend for each campaign. And so again, remember the date range you looked at here. So we looked at last 30 days. So our formula is going to be cost divided by 30 days. And then we find the maximum possible daily spend for each campaign. And so that's when we pull in the lost impression share numbers. So that formula is your average daily spend that you just made divided by 1 minus your lost impression share. And so that's going to tell us like not just what we spent on average, but what we could have spent on average given our lost impression share numbers. So again, we're just kind of figuring out how much we could have theoretically spent. Now, we found several campaigns here that are limited by budget. But I know like one of the biggest pain points I always had when I worked at an agency is I would get like reports, especially from like my AdWords account reps, they'd like send me something like, hey, these accounts are limited by budget. And they always tell me it's like, no duh. So the question here is like, we know we can grow our budgets here, but is it a good idea to do it? And so this is where Excel Solver comes in. So we add in 3 columns: solve budget, solve clicks, and solve conversions. And so what goes in each of those? Well, I'll tell you. So solve budget is left entirely to Solver itself. So we leave it blank. Solve clicks is where we take our average CPC and what our solve budget will be and basically kind of reverse engineer what our new click total would be. And you're probably seeing where this is going. The solve conversions column takes our conversion rate, multiplies it by that solve clicks amount, and figures out what our new conversion volume would be. And then we use Solver to highlight a cell in there. So again, follow the instructions and you'll figure out, figure out what to do there. Basically what we're asking Solver to do is say, give me as many conversions as possible. Like we're highlighting one cell to say, make this as large as you can. Then telling Solver to do this by changing your budget. So you're highlighting the solve budget column. And then you say, make sure my campaign can actually spend that by putting in some constraints, by saying this can't exceed my maximum possible spend. So we're putting in some constraints on it because otherwise it's just going to funnel all your spend towards like some brand campaigns, even though that brand campaign might not be able to actually spend it. So what it'll do is it'll actually give you some stuff to do. So the highlighted campaigns on this screen, they're actually getting paused because from an efficiency standpoint, like we're losing money. Based on my budget constraints, like I shouldn't be spending money here. There are better places to spend that money because I'm looking for as many conversions as possible. So the highlighted campaigns are getting paused, and then it's also providing us some opportunities to boost budgets, to reallocate that spend somewhere else. Like it's might be a brand campaign in Bing Ads. It might be like a generic campaign in AdWords. Like it's just giving you a more intelligent way to spend this money. And so the one thing here is that you're not limited to calculating your existing budget either. So using both Solver and Linist, you can chart out the potential gains from increased spend and even see the point of diminishing returns. Because the directions will show you how to do this, but you can tweak the values in one of the constraint fields to play around with values and see the incremental conversion gains as you go, like spending in this account. And so that's an array that it gives you. So I've tweaked it to say, like I'm spending $3,000 a month, $9,000 a month, and $18,000 a month, and even beyond that. And it's giving me a conversion volume for that. And using Linist to target that array, it gives me basically the line or like the equation for what I could be spending going forward. But the upshot here is that just by reallocating our budget and doing nothing else, no bids, no budgets, no bids, like no keyword additions, like I can get 1.2 more conversions per day, which was 36 more conversions a month, which for this advertiser was a 17.6% increase with no change except budgets. Which I don't know about you, like I'll take that any day, right?
I would.
All right.
I'm sure everyone on the call would too.
So you excel, therefore you rock, because today you learned about how conditional formatting can make your data easy to read. You also learned how you can use pivot tables to get insights you can't find any other way. Insights like normalized quality score and an ad copy performance heat map. You can also learn how to use features like the campaign planner and auction insights with Excel. You also learned about how to use some formulas like VLOOKUP, text join, and ifs to get things done, and then learned about plugins like Excel to just do things a little bit more intelligently, spend your budget more intelligently.
Fantastic, Eric.
Whew.
That was a whole lot of information.
It was a marathon, so this will be recorded, so you can come back to this at any time.
Absolutely. I definitely want to thank everyone who joined us today. I apologize if we did not get a chance to answer your question, but we will follow up with a blog post on any unanswered questions. There are some great questions that we do want to answer. So we will be sending out an email to everyone who joined with the replay link. Please, if you could, take a little bit of time and give us your feedback on this webinar. We would love to improve hearing your feedback. Please also, if you'd like, you can tweet #AskBingAds. Also, if you want your question answered that way as well. Eric is happy to get your tweets at eCouch11, and you see my handle as well there. So thank you, everyone. Look forward to having you on our next webcast, and until then, talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.